In 1970, a woman was found burned to death in a Norwegian valley. No name, no family, no past. More than 50 years later, we still don't know who she was or why she died. All the labels were cut off, every name was fake, every trail led nowhere. If someone erases their own identity this completely, what are they hiding? She checked into hotels under false names, traveled across Europe, and vanished into secrecy. Then she was found dead, alone, burned, and unclaimed. The date was November 29, 1970. A father and his 2 young daughters were hiking through Isdal, known locally as Ice Valley, a remote and desolate region near Bergen, Norway. The valley carried an unsettling reputation. Locals believed the land swallowed sound, and the thick, rolling fog created an almost otherworldly isolation. Few ventured here willingly. Fewer still returned unchanged. As the family navigated the rocky landscape, one of the daughters noticed something odd among the boulders. At first, she thought it was a discarded mannequin. The figure was charred, blackened, twisted into an unnatural position. But as they moved closer, the horrifying reality set in. This was not an object. This was a human being.
The body was found in a position that still disturbs forensic experts today. She was lying on her back in what is known as a pugilistic pose. Her arms were raised and bent, fists clenched. This posture occurs when a body is exposed to extreme heat. As the muscles contract, the limbs draw inward, forming what appears to be a fighter's stance. It looks as though the person is boxing with death itself.
But here is where comfortable explanations begin to crumble. The woman was only partially clothed. Her face had been burned so severely that identification seemed impossible. Scattered around her body were the remnants of what appeared to be her belongings, but they had been deliberately set on fire. A burned passport, melted plastic bottles, charred clothing. Everything that could have identified her had been carefully destroyed.
The police secured the scene, and as they began their investigation, they found something that sent a chill through even the most experienced detectives. Several sleeping pills scattered nearby, and 2 empty bottles that had contained a powerful sedative called phenomal. Suicide? Perhaps. But then they noticed her positioning, the burns, the systematic destruction of evidence, and the questions began multiplying faster than answers ever could.
2 days after the body was discovered, police received a tip about abandoned luggage at Bergen railway station. 2 suitcases, seemingly forgotten in a storage locker. When investigators opened them, they didn't find answers. They found a rabbit hole that descended into absolute madness. Inside the suitcases was an entire collection of contradictions. Clothing with all the labels carefully removed. Not torn off in haste, but meticulously cut away with scissors or a blade. Every single tag, every manufacturer's mark, every potential trace that might indicate where these items were purchased, gone.
But it wasn't just the labels. The suitcases contained wigs, multiple wigs in different styles and colors, prescription glasses with no prescription, cosmetic lenses designed to change appearance. There were several changes of clothes, all expensive, all fashionable for 1970, all completely anonymous. Investigators found a spoon, just a single spoon with its hallmark scratched off.
Who removes the identifying mark from a spoon? Someone who understands that even the smallest detail can be traced. There was also a quantity of Norwegian and German currency, along with some Belgian coins. The money itself revealed nothing, no marked bills, no sequence numbers that led anywhere useful.
And then there was the notebook. Hidden among the clothes was a small notebook filled with coded entries. Not random scribbles, but systematic notations that appeared to follow a pattern investigators couldn't crack. The entries consisted of dates, abbreviations, and what looked like location codes. Some researchers who later studied the notebook suggested it resembled operational codes used by intelligence services during the Cold War era. But perhaps most disturbing was what they found in a small pocket of one suitcase, a postcard showing a beautiful Norwegian landscape, never sent, never addressed. On the back, written in neat handwriting, "Thanks for coming." Thanks to whom? Coming where? The postcard raised questions that still echo in investigative circles today. With the suitcases as a lead, police began canvassing hotels throughout Norway. What they uncovered was a pattern so methodical, so deliberate, that it suggested professional training.
The woman had stayed in multiple hotels across Norway in the weeks leading up to her death, but she never stayed anywhere as herself, because apparently herself didn't exist. At each hotel, she checked in under a different name, different identities, different signatures. Investigators eventually tracked down 9 separate hotels where she'd stayed, and at each one she was someone else entirely. The names she used followed a pattern that still intrigues cryptographers, variations drawn from the end of the alphabet: Fenella Lorch, Alexia Zarna Merches, Vera Jarl. When investigators checked these names against international databases, they found nothing. No birth records, no passports, no paper trails. These identities existed only in hotel registries. Hotel staff offered conflicting descriptions. One remembered her as blonde. Another insisted she had dark hair. Some recalled her speaking German, others French, still others Norwegian with an unusual accent. She seemed to be a different person to everyone who met her, yet her behavior was consistent. She appeared nervous, constantly checking windows, always requesting rooms with a view of entrances. She avoided hotel restaurants, ate alone, and kept her distance from other guests. At one hotel, a maid noticed something unsettling: labels torn from cosmetics, tags cut from clothing, even the manufacturer's stamp scratched from inside her suitcase. At another hotel, a staff member recalled her meeting a dark-haired man who stayed only briefly. They spoke in hushed tones, and when he left, the woman appeared visibly distressed. Police searched for this mystery visitor, but like every other trace in her life, he vanished without a single lead.
The autopsy of the Isdal Woman revealed details that transformed this from a mysterious death into something far more sinister. The official cause of death was carbon monoxide poisoning combined with extensive burns. But this is where medical examiners ran into a wall of contradictions. The burning appeared to have occurred while she was still alive or very recently deceased. The pattern of burns was unusual, concentrated around her neck and chest, and less severe elsewhere. This was not consistent with an accident, nor with a typical case of self-immolation. Toxicology reports showed fatal levels of sleeping pills in her system, enough to kill her on their own. So why the fire? If the pills were sufficient, what purpose did the burning serve? Some forensic experts believe this pointed to murder, a woman drugged, then burned to stage a suicide. Others argued the evidence could still support self-inflicted death, with the fire meant to further destroy her identity. The autopsy revealed more. She was estimated to be between 25 and 40 years old, a frustratingly wide range caused by the damage to her body. She was well-nourished, with carefully maintained teeth, suggesting access to good dental care. Her hands showed no signs of manual labor. Her fingernails were professionally manicured. But the most disturbing finding was in her throat and lungs. Soot particles were present deep inside, proving she had been breathing when the fire began. Either she remained conscious long enough to inhale smoke, or she was unconscious from the pills but still alive as the flames took hold. The medical examiner noted one final detail: bruises across her body in various stages of healing. Someone had been hurting this woman in the weeks before her death. Defensive wounds? Abuse? Something worse. Without knowing who she was, investigators had no way to understand the violence she endured. Desperate for answers, police attempted the impossible. A facial reconstruction was created to show what the Isdal woman might have looked like before the fire. The sculpture was distributed across Europe, published in newspapers from Oslo to Berlin, from London to Paris. The hope was simple, that someone, somewhere, would recognize her. No one did. A few claimed they had, but every lead collapsed under scrutiny. The reconstruction was updated and re-released over the years. Still nothing. It was as if this woman had appeared from nowhere, lived in the shadows, and vanished completely, leaving behind only burned remains, unanswered questions, and a mystery that refused to die.
As investigators pieced together the fragments of her final weeks, a theory began to emerge, one that sounded almost too dramatic to be real, yet fit the evidence better than any alternative. Was the Isdal woman a spy? Consider the facts: multiple false identities, wigs and disguises, the systematic removal of every identifying mark, a coded notebook, nervous behavior, constant vigilance, unexplained meetings, an international travel pattern that made no sense for an ordinary civilian. Even her death raised questions. If it was suicide, it bore eerie similarities to what intelligence services call a clean exit, a deliberate destruction of identity before death. And this was 1970. The Cold War was at its frozen peak. Norway, despite its image of neutrality, occupied a critical position between NATO and the Soviet Union. Bergen itself hosted sensitive NATO installations, making it a focal point for covert activity. Intelligence historians later noted that this case mirrors known Cold War tradecraft. Operatives from the KGB, CIA, MI6, and other European services routinely used multiple cover identities, elaborate disguises, and counter-surveillance techniques, the very skills the Isdal woman appeared to possess. But the spy theory raises darker questions. If she was an intelligence operative, who was she working for, and why did she die? Did an operation fail? Was she close to exposure? Did she learn something dangerous, or was she silenced? Some experts suggest a more chilling possibility, that she was murdered by her own handlers, with the scene carefully staged to resemble suicide. By combining sleeping pills with fire, the perpetrators created maximum ambiguity, obscuring the cause of death while destroying evidence and identity. It is, disturbingly, exactly the kind of scenario taught in intelligence training during the Cold War.
Here is where the Isdal woman case takes an even stranger turn. For years, the physical evidence, her clothing, personal belongings, and the contents of the suitcases was stored in police archives, preserved for future investigation. Then, in 1987, it was all destroyed, cremated. Authorities concluded the case was cold, storage was limited, and the evidence was no longer needed. Everything that might have held DNA, hair samples, fabric origins, or coded intelligence was reduced to ash. When modern investigators later revisited the case, they discovered there was almost nothing left to analyze. The opportunity for advanced forensic testing had vanished. Some researchers believe this was simple bureaucratic negligence. Others suspect something more deliberate.
If the Isdal woman had ties to intelligence operations, there may have been powerful reasons to ensure her evidence was never re-examined. In a case this unusual, even ordinary explanations feel unsettling. In 2016, nearly 50 years after her death, Norwegian authorities made a final attempt to uncover the truth. The Isdal woman's body was exhumed from an unmarked grave in Bergen. Advances in DNA science and isotope analysis offered new hope. Forensic teams recovered enough biological material to proceed. Chemical signatures in her teeth and bones suggested she likely grew up in Central or Southern Europe, possibly Germany or neighboring regions. Her dental work aligned with European standards of the 1950s and 60s. DNA confirmed European ancestry, but no matches were found. Science narrowed the field, but still could not give her a name. Investigators traced fragments of her movements across Belgium, France, and Germany, always traveling, always under false identities, always just ahead of detection. Over decades, theories continued to haunt the case. The spy theory remains the most compelling, explaining her tradecraft, disguises, and suspicious death. Others believe she may have been a victim of trafficking, supported by signs of repeated bruising. Some suggest witness protection gone wrong, or even escape from a controlling cult that erased identities as a form of control. Each theory explains part of the mystery, but none explain all of it. And so the Isdal woman remains what she has always been, a woman without a name, a life reconstructed only in fragments, and a mystery that refuses to close.
To truly understand why this case resonates so deeply, we need to appreciate the era in which it occurred. 1970 was a paranoid time. The Cold War was at full intensity. Intelligence services on both sides ran elaborate operations. Real people vanished into secret prisons, were assassinated with exotic poisons, lived double and triple lives. The world of espionage wasn't glamorous like James Bond. It was dark, brutal, and often ended with anonymous deaths. Norway itself was a hotbed of intelligence activity. Despite its peaceful reputation, the country sat at a strategic choke point. Soviet submarines regularly patrolled Norwegian waters. NATO forces maintained crucial installations. Berlin, divided and desperate, was just a short flight away. In this context, a sophisticated woman with multiple identities dying mysteriously near Bergen doesn't seem quite so far-fetched. In fact, several confirmed cases from the era share similar elements. The difference is that those operatives were eventually identified, sometimes years later when archives were opened or defectors shared information. But not the Isdal woman. She remains unknown. In recent years, a new generation of investigators has taken up the case, armed with tools that didn't exist in 1970. Online communities, podcasts, and cold case enthusiasts have poured over every detail, generating new theories and uncovering overlooked evidence. In 2017, the BBC produced a podcast series about the case, bringing international attention and generating thousands of tips. Most led nowhere, but a few opened intriguing new avenues. Several linguists analyzed the handwriting samples, suggesting the woman might have been a native German speaker who learned Norwegian and English as an adult. Her writing style showed characteristics consistent with someone educated in the German school system of the 1950s. Amateur code breakers attempted to crack the notebook entries. Some claimed to find patterns suggesting it was a simple substitution cipher. Others argued it was a more sophisticated code, possibly a one-time pad that would be unbreakable without the key. Genealogists attempted to use the DNA to find distant relatives, reasoning that even if no one reported her missing, she must have family somewhere. This approach has solved numerous cold cases in recent years, but for the Isdal woman, the genealogical databases produced no usable matches.
In the decades since the Isdal woman's death, other cases have surfaced with unsettling similarities. In 1977, another unidentified woman was found dead in Norway, her identity systematically erased. In Germany, several cases from the 1970s and 80s involved women discovered dead with every identifying mark removed from their belongings. Were these coincidences, copycat crimes inspired by media coverage, or evidence of a broader pattern, multiple operatives trained in the same methods, meeting similar fates? This question has never been answered, but it adds another disturbing layer to the mystery. If the Isdal woman was not unique, how many others vanished the same way, never recognized, never named? So who was the Isdal woman? After more than 50 years of investigation, exhumations, DNA analysis, isotope testing, linguistic studies, and cryptographic attempts, we still don't know. She remains Jane Doe number 134, buried in Bergen in an unmarked grave. No family has claimed her, no government has acknowledged her. But here is what we do know, and it may be more unsettling than any solution. Someone knows exactly who she was. Someone knows why she lived in hiding. Someone knows what happened in that valley. If she was a spy, her agency knows her name. If she was running from someone, they know who she was. If she was murdered, someone got away with it. Her anonymity may not be accidental, it may be deliberate. In a world of surveillance, databases, and artificial intelligence, remaining unknown requires extraordinary effort. The Isdal woman is not just an unsolved mystery. She is proof that true disappearance is still possible, that some lives are erased by design. Somewhere in a sealed archive in Moscow, Langley, Berlin, or London, there may be a file with her real name and her real story. That file remains closed, perhaps forever. And if she was one of many, how many other valleys hide similar secrets? How many unmarked graves contain people meant to be forgotten? The Isdal woman walked among us. She checked in to hotels. She watched cities through windows. She was real. And then she vanished into fire and silence. On cold nights in Isdalen Valley, some say the mist still gathers where she was found. Probably just fog. Probably. But maybe some mysteries don't want to be solved. The Isdal woman has kept her secret for more than half a century, and every year that passes makes it more likely she always will.